A wedding is the ceremony of getting married, while marriage is a long-term relationship between two individuals. One is an event, the other is a process. Many couples make very elaborate plans for their wedding and forget or overlook to plan for their life after marriage. Stay tuned as we learn more on today's topic of the marriage classroom.
Good evening, everyone. And good evening, our viewers. Welcome to today's class, the marriage classroom. We have actually been learning that this is a class where learning that never comes to an end. We will continue learning as long as we live. Now, for today's topic, we are looking at a very key, because we are now talking about preparing the young person who is about or going towards marriage. And today we want to look at the premarital. Is it single L or double L? Premarital counseling.
It depends whether you're British or American.
Yeah, so premarital counseling. Now, one of the things that I would think that is a prerequisite here is these are people, we have already talked about people who are in courtship, not dating, courtship, people who have already decided that they are going to get married. We are talking about people who probably have set what in the last lesson was called milestones, right? Whereby you have already set a possible timeline. There are timelines that you have set. Like, for example, we are going to visit the parents, and if at all that is within the cultural context, we are going to do the negotiations for the dowry by this date. Or probably we intend to do a wedding or to get married at this particular time. Now, before you go to that now, doing the wedding or getting married, it is very strongly advised that you go for premarital counseling. Premarital counseling, is an attempt. It is not necessarily that you evaluate yourselves whether you are fit for one another, but sometimes it actually occurs whereby when people are going through premarital counseling, they realize, I think we can. This is not the direction that we were thinking, because you definitely be taught and advised to talk about certain issues, which we are going to mention in today's lesson. But it's basically to be able to examine some unresolved issues. Excuse me. Like, for example, when we are talking about the issue of cross-cultural marriage, cross-cultural, maybe, and that has come to several times in the course of the series that we have been having. You are from one community and you're getting married to another community. Probably some parents have raised some issues. You re-evaluate. That is an unresolved issue. You re-evaluate it. It will also be able to help you to clarify personal values. Like, for example, one of the topics that I'm going to mention later is biblical foundation for marriage. You come to ask yourself, and it has been mentioned by Dr. Njeri, the regular teacher for this class. She has already mentioned that there are certain premises, there are certain values that you need to have and to stick to. So it also helps you to set realistic expectations in that marriage. I have gone to certain weddings and people are being told, especially the men, now you have gotten somebody to be cooking for you. Now you have gotten somebody to be washing for you. So the lady almost maybe that time she's feeling, am I a chef or a cook for that particular time? Or am I a washing machine? That kind of thing. But basically we are saying you come with expectations and you look at, and some of those expectations, by the way, they will change in the course of time. Even when you get married, they will change. They will change. Let me mention one between us. We got married, and there is this expectation, and even for herself, she had that expectation that she'll be taking the shoes and brushing them in the morning. For me, doing the good things to the husband. And once in a while when she's very, very busy, I would go and try to brush my shoes. Then, lo and behold, I like when you get my shoe polish. You don't go donadonaring, yeah? That's not an English word, eh? Usiende kudonado, dona na brush. You swirl on top. It stays smooth. Hey, hello? And then my wife is the kind of what going to... So a few times I went and found my shoe polish like that, and then I would start by swirling it, returning it to its the form that I like. And then at some time I felt that it is why do you do this? Said, lakini I'm still brushing the shoes. So I told her, excuse me, let's agree on one thing. You be doing other things, I'll be brushing my shoes. And now we have been married for about 30 years. And I've been brushing my shoes. So some of those expectations actually do change in marriage. But you have in premarital, you are able to set realistic expectations for marriage. You are also able to develop conflict resolution skills. Part of those conflicts, obviously, will arise in the course of your in the course of your courtship, in the course of that time, and how you resolve it, on how you help to resolve that. You are able to develop that. And this, of course, the aim is to increase the chances of having a successful marriage and reduce the chances of divorce. Because if at all you are properly prepared, you know what you're getting into, then in case some of these things happen, you already know. Like, for example, what I have told you, we have told many young people before they get married, don't go there with very, overly high expectations. Like, for example, because you are told in the wedding, especially by some of our mothers who back from the rural areas, that she's the cook. So you come from work, both of you are career persons, eh? And you come from work, you have arrived earlier, but you come and switch on the TV and wait for her, who is coming maybe even much later, and probably had even a heavier day, to come and go into the kitchen to make you a cup of tea. And there you are reading. So the issue is, are those expectations realistic? So you're able to have that, and as a result, the chances of your marriage working is much better. Now, we ourselves, we were heavily helped by one of our friends who had married earlier. And he himself, he was taken through premarital counseling. But there are many instances where many people go into weddings and marriage without that premarital counseling. But this friend of ours called us one evening. We were given premarital counseling one evening. It started from around 8 in the evening. We found that when they were already in the kitchen preparing some meal, it was soon over. And then from around 8 to around almost 2 a.m., it was done in one evening. But we are forever grateful for that, because nobody had ever taken us through that. And some of the things that were told to us by none other, that maybe because people now know him, and that is Ruben Kigame. What we are saying is that he took us and his wife, they took us through that premarital counseling, and we are forever grateful. So what we are saying is premarital counseling is necessary. We are actually emphasizing that it's necessary. Of course, some people think that it is not, but we are saying it is necessary. I don't know, Steve, you seem to have a question? Oh, okay. Then, what are some of the topics that are covered?
Excuse me.
Yes.
What about in cases where maybe you may be in a fellowship or a church where maybe that is never done, or somehow it's like the only important thing is about wedding.
Okay.
What
Good
happens
question.
to those? Maybe you're saying it's necessary, and maybe in my church we don't do it. What would happen?
Very, very good, because quite often we have this being done by the clergy. When you go to your pastor or whatever title that is given to him, the clergy, they will tell you before you wed, come and we have premarital counseling. And some of them will do one evening. And some of them will do probably a structured system of going through it. But I would also want to say, if there is no premarital counseling in your church, a program that you are taken through, there are very many people who offer premarital counseling. And it doesn't even, you don't have, again, there is also another challenge occasionally, whereby you are relating, you want to get married, and one person is, say for example, in Kisumu, the other one is in Meru. Now, which one do you attend? Because ideally, you should attend the same premarital counseling so that whatever is being told to you is being told to the both of you, ideally. Now, the good thing is the technology has helped us that you can actually resolve to take premarital counseling over Zoom. It is possible over Google Meet, virtually, so to say. We are saying, like, for example, there was a couple that we were taking through, and the man was in Mombasa, and the lady was in Eldoret. But they contacted one of their brothers, and their brother recommended that we could take them through premarital counseling. And we agreed with them from the beginning. What are the topics that we are going to cover? What are the topics that you feel are most relevant to you before you get married? And all those, they were in attendance, both of them, of course, virtually. So there are cases whereby it is offered within your church organization. There are cases where it is offered within your fellowship. There are cases where some brethren within the church would also opt, because probably they are not. Like we used to do that quite often before, in a fellowship we were in, or in a church we were in, and there was no structure. So basically, if at all there is no structure, you can also contact somebody who can be able to take, or maybe a couple, or a counselor, a marriage counselor, who can be able to take you through that. So thank you for that question. Yes, Steve.
Can one seek for a premarital counseling from people who have done a come-we-stay kind of marriage, but yet they have the experience?
There is wisdom in everybody. And I wouldn't want to say that don't go to this kind of person. But I would also want to say that go to people who can be able to, who have the moral authority. Go to people who have the moral authority to guide you in what you're doing. Because if at all I did a come-we-stay, I will not find anything, and ours has worked. And let's face it, there are so many people who have done a wedding and it has not worked. There are so many people who started, not right, but somewhere along the way, they learned things and they did the things right. They probably were not born again that time. Now they are born again and they're living, and they can be able to advise you. Wisdom can be found in everywhere and in anybody. But I would also want to say, I think the issue of moral authority is very critical.
And in some cases, or some of the topics that I usually handled in premarital, like wedding preparation and issue, if they didn't take those steps, they may not be able to guide you well on the issues of how to prepare for the wedding. If they just did, they would even know more, like, say, this area we don't know. So I think, as you say, there are some areas they will do well, but there are some areas that they may have a weakness in that, or challenges, now that they don't know.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew you look like you had a question. And now, thank you that you have brought it out. So you are looking at the issue of what are the topics that are covered during premarital. Number one is biblical foundations of marriage. Biblical foundations. This is very critical. We are talking about biblical foundations for marriage. Now, one of the things that you need to do is to understand that every time that any manufacturer has ever manufactured anything, they always, like especially the electronics, or even a car, they always give a manual. Many of us, including your phone, but many of us tunajifanya ya kwamba tunajua sana, and we never read that manual. That is why the other day I was being told that I'm only using about 20% of the capacity of my phone. Only 20%. There is so much that you can be able to do with that phone. But if you don't know, for example, that you can be able to use it as a calculator, and I'm talking about a scientific calculator, then you'll never use it. You know, so the manual for a human being is actually the Bible. And if you want to understand how to have a successful marriage, it is important for you to understand what does the Bible say, what was God's intention for marriage. And therefore, one of the key topics that you need to look at is the topic on biblical foundations of marriage. Of course, one of them has been alluded to. The issue of wedding planning. You need to plan your wedding. It doesn't just happen. It needs some bit of planning. And you need to understand what are the nitty-gritty of wedding planning. Even when you're saying you'll come up with a wedding committee, how do you form that wedding committee? You know, some people have formed wedding committee. They have called the people, and the people who have come, they are not people to help them. They are people who have come to look for job or brokers. Somebody has come to your wedding a wedding committee, because he wants to propose and insist on a certain service provider. Hey, are we communicating?
Yeah.
So, in this case, therefore, we are saying the issue of wedding planning is very critical in premarital counseling. There is also legal issues. Legal issues are very critical, because marriage is both something that is spiritual in nature, but there are also legal implications. And particularly more so, you need to understand if you're in Kenya, you need to understand what does the Marriage Act in Kenya state? Whom can you marry? Whom can you not marry? Because the act is very clear. I know in some Middle East countries, there is nothing wrong with marrying a cousin, for example. But in Kenya, you need to understand, you need to read that, to be taken through that. You need to understand that if you get married, what we call the traditional marriages, the act itself says very clearly that once you get those negotiations, ratio, goito, whatever it's called, in your culture, once they have been done, currently in Kenya, you have to register that marriage with the registrar of marriages. There before, people were just getting even that come we stay. By the way, come we stay is not a marriage. Sometimes it was argued in one court that if you have been come we stay and you have been staying together for more than 6 months, you have been introducing one another as spouses, then it is already that act, I think 2013, actually changed that altogether. Every marriage must be registered for it to be recognized under the law. So if you don't register your marriage, you are actually technically or legally not married. So you need to be taken through some of those things, including the issues of inheritance and so on. Now, the other thing is, and this is very critical, is the issue of we expect, especially in the African context, that every marriage will result into children. You know, you're going to be blessed with the children. Of course, in reality, that is not always the case. So you need to be taken through a topic on children and parenting. Children and parenting, like, how do you name your children? You know, it looks so simple, probably because we come from a certain cultural setting. But we also have cross-cultural settings. And even within a cultural setting, you need to agree on how do you name your children. How many children are you going to have? Supposing all of them are girls. Supposing all of them are boys. Those are conversations that you need during the premarital. And once you're blessed with the children, how are you going to bring them up? Very critical again. How are you going to be disciplined? I don't know whether any one of you has ever came from a family whereby the mother tells you, oh, umefanya hivi, ngoja baba yako afike. Anybody who is familiar with such, ngoja baba yako afike. So it's in that family, it's like the disciplinarian is the father. And probably some of us come from families where discipline was the reserve of the mother. You know, the mother was the one to deal with her children. And therefore, if at all they were spoiled, quote and quotes, the father will always point out, angalia watoto yako, you know. So because that is the expectation. So that is something that needs to be done, and it's done in premarital. We also have African traditions and cross-cultural marriages. African traditions, we have already mentioned that most of the weddings that we are done in church, more often than not, the people have already gotten through the traditional part of it. We have said, for example, the negotiations for dowry, and probably some of the parents really stick to some of those things so much. How do you deal with that? You need to be taken through. And cross-cultural marriages. Now, when we are dealing with the issue of cross-cultural marriages, we always say cross-cultural does not necessarily mean that you come from two different races or two different communities or two different countries. It could be cross-cultural even when you are getting married to somebody from the same village, speaking the same language as you. Now, my friend is wondering how. Okay, now I'll point out just one in the interest of time. Cross-cultural marriage is these people have grown in a different family. That family has a way of the way they deal with things. One priest was telling us that kwao watoto walikuwa wengi, such that when they were playing out there, the grandmother, because they were brought by the grandmother, once the food was ready, she would put it in a big platter, kind of a very big one, round, and place it somewhere. And then she would call, Gashohi, shauri yako. So once you had shauri yako, it meant food is ready. Sasa wewe usipokuja kukula ni shauri yako. In other words, and they would rush and they would grab the food. We have families whereby once the food is ready, somebody will get into the fridge or get into the kitchen and serve themselves and go and eat whether the others are eating or not. We also have families whereby dinner time is almost sacred. Somebody has to be there and you all sit around a dining table. And there is a seat for everybody, particularly most of the head. And before you eat, probably you pray together. Or after eating, there is what you do. Now, you see that one is one culture and another one is another culture. So that is why you need to actually be able to understand those things. And I hope you are realizing courtship is not just telling one another sweet nothings. They have their place. Like, I love you like. Okay, now you're just smiling. It's not just about telling one another.
Mistari. Wanaweza saidiana hapa tu. Kuna mmoja amekuja hapa asaidiwe. So, can somebody...
You look like you have an idea. Some of these mistari.
I love you like...
Anyway, let's move from there. Some people are shying here. We are simply saying there is need for you to actually learn these things. There is need for you to have a conversation with your significant other, with your spouse to be. Another topic is communication in marriage. By the way, that's one of the most important topics because the way even we have been brought up, we communicate differently from our families. Like I always say that we grew up in a situation whereby our mothers used to give us instructions in the negative. You are wondering what? Aya, nimeacha hiyo chakula kwa jiko, musiweke moto, yani kuni musiweke kuni, nikikuja jioni mutanikula. Ama unaenda kuchunga mzee anakuambia wewe chukua ng'ombe na usiende mwende kucheza, mwende mkacheze tu, muachane na ng'ombe zikule shamba za wenyewe. We came to learn that what the parent is actually saying is what you should not do. Are you getting what we are saying? Yeah. And probably somebody has come from that kind of family. There were times when our mothers would look at you and you understood what they are telling you by simply looking at you. Yani, a way of looking at you ni kukwambia ishia. Another way of looking at you is to tell you that you should go to sleep. Probably in the presence of visitors, especially. So we are saying communication in marriage is one of the key topics that is covered under premarital counseling. Of course, the other one is in-laws and third parties. How do you treat the in-laws? This is one of the things that Reuben Kigame helped us a great deal. a great deal. How do you deal with your in-laws? And sometimes you hear people say mother-in-law, you know, even that whatever that is there, you know, that program on some TV, you realize that the people depict the in-laws as if they are always from hell. You know, the in-laws as if they are people who are to be feared. But the truth of the matter is, you can end up being closer to your own in-law than in even your own brothers and sisters and mother and father. It has happened. And it happens. In-laws are not always devilish, so to say. Let's be very clear on that. But part of it is what you bring to the table. How do you relate with them? How do you conduct yourself when you are with them? If they come from a different culture, for example, we have a friend, she's Luo, got married to a Luya. And when the father-in-law came, the father-in-law would not agree to get into her house initially. And especially if at all the husband is not there. Or even shake hands, you know, leave alone the matters of COVID, shaking hands. So basically we are saying the way you understand those things, and of course you have other person helps you to understand, is very important. We have already talked about this, that conflict resolution is one of the topics. Conflict resolution. We have roles, expectations, and responsibilities. Roles, expectations, and responsibilities. What are the roles of the wife? What are the expectations? What are the responsibilities? What are the roles, the responsibilities, and expectations of the husband? As you get into marriage, you need to understand one another so that I don't go into something expecting, probably because of how I have been brought up, and the other person does not relate with that. We often give this example. A couple who got married. In the wife's family, the father is the one who used to buy meat. Always is the one who used to buy meat. Then, in the husband's family, the father used to come with money, give to the wife, and the mother is the one who used to know what is going to be bought for dinner. So they get into marriage, and the man is bringing the money, but not buying meat. And the wife is staying and wondering, why is this guy not bringing meat into this house? And the man, the man is also wondering, why is my wife never buying meat? Until one time, the man asked, why is it that we never eat meat in this house? Said, but you have never brought. You know, now it starts like a blame. But you have never brought meat. But I brought the money, you know. But after discussing, they came to realize it is something to do about your expectations. And those are some of the things that need to be discussed before you get into marriage. We are also talking about family finances. Family finances is something that is very critical. Very critical.
Whose money?
Whose money? You know, you hear that the wives sometimes say, the wife's money is her money.
What do they know about the money? You can tell us. Is it, now the lady is here, would you surrender your money
to your spouse? Somebody say, the sound alone. Yeah, let's go into that.
Personally, I don't think I would have any issue concerning bringing to plate my money. It's ours.
Okay.
I wouldn't have an issue.
So it is not you who said,
It was somewhere
but there was some sound around there. The ladies, what do you think?
For me, my money is my money. Your money is our money.
And somebody is saying, yeah.
I'm thinking it's a question of responsibility. Some responsibilities for the man and the lesser ones for the woman. E.g. something like school fees, maybe. I think it should be left to the man, and things like maybe food, small things for the woman.
What about
yes, Steve?
What about in situations where the man, for example, he's earning less than the woman?
Yeah, and those situations are there.
Yeah.
Yet
you are just buying food with
I was
more
asking
money.
like a question.
Yeah, that's true. That's why we are here. Yes.
Very good.
Those are expectations.
Yeah, so those are expectations. Whatever you have, by the way, since we are not taking you through the premarital, but whatever you have said, I hope you realize that there is need for a conversation, isn't it? There is a need for a conversation before you get married. Whose money will be whose? Is it what she's saying? That my money is mine, but yours is ours. And then Steve raised a question. What if at all you are earning more than I'm earning? Because it's quite common. By the way, you can even start in a situation whereby the man is earning more, but probably if at all you are in different working places, you find that the lady gets promoted much faster, grows and starts earning much more than the husband. Whose money is whose money? Finances. And how are we going to manage those finances? You know, you may believe in the issue of giving the tithe, and somebody else thinks that that is waste of money. I think some of these things need to be actually agreed upon before you get married. Yes.
Also, on the same, as I have a question, recently there was this court ruling that the husband should be paying the housewife if the wife is the housewife.
That was a very good ruling, by the way. Because you find many women, when they are asked what they do, anasema mimi sifanyi kazi. And then the man is the one who anafanya kazi. Yani kutoka asubuhi mpaka jioni, hujafanya kazi yoyote. We are not saying that ahesabiwe pesa. You know, ahesabiwe pesa ambayo mshahara yako ni this amount. That's not what we are saying. But actually, even before that ruling was there, the legal, and you remember we talked about legal issues, isn't it? The legal issue is this. If you were to buy any property as a man, even there before, when you are already married, that is what we call marital property. And you cannot sell it. By the way, you cannot sell marital property without the consent of your wife. No. Because you are helping him to earn. He's the one who was earning the money, the salary. But you are the one who was taking care of his children, or his house, or his dogs at home. See, the dogs were offering security. So basically we are saying women also work. So we are saying one of the topics is family finances. And you realize that it is important, isn't it? Then the other thing is family planning.
Excuse, there is a concern here. It is relating to family finances and in-laws. Whereby you find out that in a family that maybe the husband is providing especially to his family, familia yao. Yeah. And then the lady is now arguing out. Why is it that you usually help on your side of the family?
Very well.
Rather than the others?
Very well, very well. In fact, those are the issues that we are saying need to be tackled before you get married. Yeah? What are the roles that you have also as a man? Probably you have several siblings who are in school. Or your parents are aged and they were not working. But it can also happen the other way, that the lady is the only one who was educating her siblings. And probably her parents are also aged. What are the roles, the responsibilities that you have before you get into marriage? So that later on, as you do that, and maybe I may want to mention something about in-laws. One of the things that was helped us a great deal, and I mentioned, is that if there is anything good being done to that, like for example, to my wife's family, I am the one, especially in matters finances, I'm the one to do it. Where they need money, it is me to give the money. You get it? If it is my side of the family, she is the one to do it. Sio yeye awe akificha pesa zingine anawapatia huku ambazo sijui, na mimi ninaficha zingine ninapatiana pande hii. No. Because family money, our money is our money, you know? Anyway, that subject.
And that's why you realize why some of these things arise in marriage, and they may be the causes of conflict, because people didn't talk and reason about these issues. Once, because that is part of the work and assignment you are given during premarital, you go and talk until the one we say, my money, your money, they have a common ground. How are we going to treat our money? Is our money even more important than our bodies that we will be sharing? Yeah? So, I mean, your money is not even more expensive than you.
Very well. So you realize basically you realize that there is a need. What we are actually raising is there is a need for premarital counseling on that area, and there is a need for a conversation between the two of you. Because if you don't have that conversation, eventually it may lead to unresolvable conflict once you're in marriage. Utasikia watu wakisema ya kwamba you hate my brothers, or you hate my sisters, or you hate my parents. And it is not hating. It is simply the expectations with which we came into marriage. You need to deal with that. I was talking about family planning and medical issues. Family planning and medical issues is yet another topic that is covered because you need to agree on how many children, how are you going to space them. We have one of our sons who has decided they sat down together with the wife and they agreed they are going to download the number that they want because the lady is a career. She has college education, university education, but they agreed you are not going to start your career until our children go to school. So what is it that we do? We get our children, and within 5 years, they already had 3 kids. There are others who want to space 5 years. Ili when one goes to Form 1, amalize Form 4 kabla huyu mwingine aingie. You know, it is based on your issues. But what are the family planning? How are you going to do that? What about the medical issues? Or maybe when you're getting married, you may not have very many medical issues, but as you age, a few issues may end up cropping up. And how do we deal with that? Another topic is sexual intimacy and the honeymoon. Sexual intimacy and the honeymoon. I'm sure that in the next lesson, you will learn something to do with the wedding preparation and the honeymoon. But I would want to mention here that sexual intimacy is something that when we got married, and we are once again, we are thankful that the Kigames took us through that. But when we got married, we went for our honeymoon, and where we went, it was a Christian center. And the priest or the vicar in charge of that particular place called us. We met 14 couples. 14 couples in that place when we went for honeymoon. You know, within 2-3 days you have discovered hata hawa wamekuja honeymoon. So we were there 14 couples in the place where we went. And the vicar in charge, because he knew, he called us one evening and we had a nice fellowship and he had a nice time of talking to us. And even we had Holy Communion. And finally, one of the statements that he mentioned there has never left us. If any marriage is on the rocks, most likely the rocks are in bed. Umetengeneza uso. When during premarital, you'll be taken through that. So what are the benefits? What are the benefits of going through premarital? Very quickly. Number one, it builds communication skills. We had already mentioned some of these things. It builds communication skills. One other thing that you can be able to realize from here is that it provides an opportunity to address issues. You know, it provides you with an opportunity to address issues. And part of that addressing issues is planning your future. It gives you an opportunity to plan your future. Like we have already mentioned, the handling of finances, the handling of in-laws, the handling of children. It gives you an opportunity to plan your future. And it lets couples absorb wisdom. You're able to get a lot of wisdom from those people who have gone before you. You know, and I think Steve mentioned that when he was saying, what about this couple? They are living right and all that. Can we go to them? And it allows couples to discover new things about themselves. You know, you will end up discovering your temperament. You'll end up discovering your values. You'll end up discovering your talents, your giftings, and so on and so forth in your marriage, which is something that is very, very, very critical. So I want to take this opportunity, therefore, to ask all of you, before you get married, before you do that wedding, please go through premarital counseling. It will help you a great deal. For us, it helped us. Even if it was done in an evening, it helped us and has continued to help us a great deal. Can you go through premarital counseling? And even our viewers, please ensure that you go through premarital counseling before you do that. Yes, please.
Okay, I have a question.
This Noel, eh?
Yeah. You find so many families get to break up just because of, let's say, the husband majorly gets to hear most of the nini he listens more to the in-laws rather than her wife. So how can you respond to such like a scenario?
Now, that's why we are saying that people need to be taken through premarital so that they understand, number one, the biblical foundations. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, and the two of them shall become one. Living is not in terms, you don't leave your father and mother and they cease to be your parents. They will forever be your parents. But if you can be able to remember when Southern Sudan, in the northern, now we call it Sudan, when Southern Sudan got independence from Northern Sudan, they now have their own president, they have their army, they have everything in the south. They only retain diplomatic relations. So there is a relationship, but it's diplomatic. But when it comes to the issues that are being tackled in Southern Sudan, they are being tackled by the government of Southern Sudan. In the same way, issues in a family, my family, are mine and my wife. It is not my father to come and rule there. Because you have already, in terms of the authority, I'm saying it is living in terms of authority. Now, if you cross-check some of those things, is because either people never went through premarital, or they were so attached to their families, they don't want to leave. And that can bring issues. That's why we are saying going through premarital helps somebody be able to realize what is the biblical foundation for this, and how should I deal with my in-laws? Because we don't lose our parents, we gain more.
And it's very important when you are taken through premarital, you realize who exactly is who in your life. There is your mother who is your mother, but there is your wife who is a wife. There is no way your wife can be your mother cannot be your wife. So once you know as a man, you know where the boundaries stop. Okay? Mom has brought you up, has cooked for you until the time you have married. If you ever decide to eat from your mother's, then your wife must know, because you are old enough to decide that I need my family. And this lady has come because of you. So I believe such a man should evaluate exactly what are my basis of getting married. Am I really mature enough to the fact that I can be an authority in my family, in my home, where I make the decisions, not my mother or my father.
Very well. Yeah, any other quick question? Very well. I had already asked you, before you marry, please ensure you go through premarital counseling, either through your church or your fellowship, or through somebody that you can ask to, of course, that one you'll pay, if at all it's not within the church setting, you'll pay for it. But it is very important to go through premarital counseling. Thank you so much, and thank you for being there together with us. And we look forward to more learning. God bless you.
Stay tuned for the next lesson of the Marriage Classroom. To get the notes of today's lesson, visit www.mbcimedia.com/TMC. Catch the repeat of this episode every Tuesday at 10 p.m.